Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. These are our special episodes talking about Skeleton Crew, each and every one, today focusing on Season 1, Episode 3. We're going to be in so much trouble. But before we get into that, we'd like to introduce our guest for today, Nick Ghanbarian from the band Bayside and Thank the Maker podcast. Welcome to the Triad.
Welcome, sir. How's it going, man?
It's good. Thank you for having me. I know we've been talking about doing this for a little bit, so I'm glad to finally do it.
Yeah, it's definitely been very excited, definitely, I mean, obviously I know you before from Bayside, and then to getting into all this Star Wars social media stuff, lo and behold, the surprise of like having a musician from a band that I like also have a cool Star Wars podcast, and then that explodes into Mos Eisley and Anaheim, which was one of the best things ever. So like it's a perfect mixture of like all of my interests. So very excited to have you over, because that Star Wars Celebration Anaheim with the first Mos Eisley was definitely a core memory.
Yeah, it a lot of stuff. Thankfully, you never know where life will take you sometimes. But I joined Thank the Maker very early on because Adam from Story of the Year and Ryan from Yellow Card started a podcast called Thank the Maker, and me and Ryan from Yellow Card have the same manager, and they were out here in California at the time just getting the podcast going, and my manager hit me up and was like, do you want to be on their podcast? They're band guys, want to talk about Star Wars. I'm like, yeah, sure. So they came over and we talked about Solo in my living room, and it was a podcast. And I don't remember if it was like later that day or the following day, Ryan was like, that was awesome, you should just be a host. So I was like, okay.
That works.
Yeah, I never really was a podcast host before that, but I was and still am very much so. Like, I spend a lot of time listening to, more so these days, like hockey podcasts, but still Star Wars podcasts and stuff like that. So, and then that turned into Mos Eisley, which is great because within a year of starting Thank the Maker, we had started to work with a couple of other friends that we made on the internet. This was all during COVID, so we made internet friends with Princess and Scoundrel podcast and the Dano channel, and our friend Mike who does Hondo Supply. So Mos Eisley was just born out of like a kind of I had done like a very did you guys go to 2019 Star Wars Celebration in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Chicago based, so
awesome.
I was there.
So it was Sunday night. That particular celebration was 5 days, wasn't it? It was like Thursday to Monday.
It was a marathon,
right? Yeah. So Sunday night of that Chicago celebration, I hosted an after party, like emo night thing. My friends Steve and Alex, they ran at the time Black Series Rebels. They had all these like enamel pins and stuff, so we kind of just teamed up and had like a Sunday night small after party. It wasn't near the convention at all. It was definitely like a 20-minute excursion, if you want.
Do you remember what bar it was by any chance?
It was at Beauty Bar.
Oh yeah, Beauty Bar is excellent. And they have legendary emo worship pop nights on Sundays.
Exactly. My friend runs that. So fast forward like 2 years or something, we all have podcasts, Star Wars celebrations at Anaheim. I'm like, I feel like with our following, we could kind of have a party. And we did it. We just launched it, just being like, cool, here's a logo, and we're just going to have a Star Wars emo night. And it sold out in like a week and a half, and we were like, oh, okay, this is a real thing, I guess. So from that point on, like, we kind of just were like, I think the people, like the Star Wars emo music community is dictating that we need to take this seriously. So like we've really taken it seriously, and we've done a handful of them already, and the next one's coming up in Orlando February 7th. So it's been fun. I'm sitting in here. I have this little like back unit of my place that's all like my podcast studio, surrounded by all the Mos Eisley merch. So it's like my little warehouse and podcast studio back here. So
like I didn't even think about it. I have my Mos Eisley t-shirts, and didn't even think about putting mine on. Definitely should have, because not only excuse me, not only that was I able to go to that first one down in Anaheim, but a
Mhm.
couple months ago I was over at Dragon Con and
Oh,
I was
yeah?
able to go to Mach Isley Atlanta, and that was
Yeah.
absolutely a blast. And
Yeah, that was a good one.
we're both mutual friends of Alex and Molly over at Star
Of
Wars
course,
Explained,
yeah.
so he was able to sneak me into the stage during
Great.
the Motion City soundtrack bit. So it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
another core memory
Yeah, no, it's
forged
fun.
there.
It's fun. I'd love to do more of them where we're just, we all have separate lives and so much going on in our lives. Like
Mhm.
half the people have kids and that are run Mosh Isley, the other half are in bands. It's like I want to do like 10, 15 of them a year, just
Yeah,
hop to
yeah.
conventions, but it's really hard for us to like
Yeah.
get everyone together or at least most of the group together to do
Mhm.
more, but we're working on it. We'll see.
It gets harder the
Yeah.
older we get,
That's for
more
sure.
responsibilities. But hopefully one day at C2E2, we're
Oh,
gonna have
I'd love to.
another Much Isley. Well,
I would love
a Much
to.
Isley in Chicago.
That's like really at the top of the list is to do one in Chicago. That's for sure.
But but I digress. If it were up to me, I would take over this podcast to just talk about pop punk and emo and punk and like all that fun stuff, because that's another podcast that I would like to have someday. But today, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who's listening, we are here to talk about Star Wars and Skeleton Crew. And we're at the end game. We're here. We made it. We're the
Mhm.
penultimate episode. We have just a couple days before the finale, so it's definitely been a roller coaster ride. But Nick, how has Skeleton Crew fared for you so far? Because I've seen. I mean, obviously, we're like now only on Blue Sky, so we're in our liberal bubble where
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
eats everything.
Yeah.
So everything I've seen has been hugely positive. But like, what
Yeah.
has your experience been so far?
I mean, that I could say for the most part, it's Star Wars, even in like the spaces like Instagram, is the most positive and united that fans have been in a long time,
Yeah.
and I think rightfully so. Like I think most of the Star Wars hate, from the people who don't necessarily really like Star Wars, it's mostly unfounded or at least misinterpreted hate, kind of.
Mhm, mhm.
So this show I think deserves all the accolades that it's getting. I think, personally, and I don't think that, not speaking for Thank the Maker at all, like, I think Star Wars has, like, hit a little bit of a rough patch in the last 2 years. I think that a
Yeah.
lot of the shows have really not necessarily delivered as much as I'd like to. And the ones that I think did were very, like, middle of the road successful. Like, I thought
Mhm, mhm.
Ahsoka and Andor were two of the best things that Disney Star Wars has done.
Mhm.
And if you look at streaming numbers, which we've talked about on Thank the Maker, those were very middle of the road.
Mhm, mhm.
So they weren't exactly the most successful. And I think, in my opinion, Mando season 3 gave us a lot of good moments that felt a little less unearned than previously. So I had a hard time with Mando season 3. Although if you wrote down on paper the stuff that happened in Mando
Yeah.
season 3, I'd be like, this is
Mhm.
amazing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
as you watch it, you're
Yeah.
like, I wish we would have like kind of gotten a little bit more explanation or a little bit more screen time to earn that. So I don't know. In the
Mhm.
last 2 years or so, I've seen like some of the best Star Wars ever, but I could also say that there might have been a lot of unearned and some of the least good Star Wars.
Mhm.
So something like Skeleton Crew, I think you really get to see that the showrunners have the same vision and feel
Mhm,
for the vibe of what Star Wars is. And I think that that's something that I've talked a lot about recently where, for me, Acolyte was missing a vibe. I think the
mhm.
story was good, but I think it was missing a vibe. And I think that's noticeable. So I'm bummed that got canceled. I would have
Yeah.
loved to have seen more where
Mhm.
the story was going to go, but there's literally why Star Wars is like so special to so many generations of people is a feel and a vibe. And when
Mhm.
you have different people directing and writing and stuff, um, I think it'll be difficult to create that vibe. But what Favreau and Filoni do, which you could see that they're producers on this, they
Mhm.
understand the vibe. So I really do wish
Yeah.
that, I know Filoni is in charge of a lot more these days than he was, but um, I think first and foremost with all Star Wars, the vibe has to be there, and like
Mhm.
Andor necessarily doesn't have that vibe. like Andor's a very unfun show, you know, like
Very much so.
every
I'll
week
agree with
that
that
I
one.
watched it, I'm like, I loved that episode, but I did not have any fun watching it. It was brutal, but like,
It's torturous fun.
yeah,
Let's put it
yeah,
that
yeah.
way.
But it's so good that you're like,
Yeah.
I can't believe this is Star Wars,
Yeah.
because what Star Wars is to me is a fun feeling, and Andor
Yeah.
is the opposite. But I'm like, I can't believe what I'm watching is Star Wars. So that's a whole other conversation. But to me, Skeleton Crew just has like the right vibe. I think it's brilliant, literally brilliant, how they're towing the line of the, you know, I know we're all overusing this phrase now, but the Amblin Entertainment, like Goonies,
Yeah.
ET vibe
Yeah.
in the Star Wars universe. It's not forced. It's not corny. It's like literally they're just on the fence of it, you know, like just balancing act of making it be Star Wars in that genre, and it's excellent. So we're having a blast with it. I thank the maker. I love that there's a lot more mystery to the show than I thought there was going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the final episode really gives us a lot more mystery, because it's such a detached story right now from the time frame that it's in with the New Republic and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it could go one of two ways. It could stay detached, or this final episode could really have something that ties it into the time frame where we're going to have Ahsoka season 2 and the Mando and Grogu movie and stuff like that. So that's what I'm hoping for. It could totally not and still be awesome, though. It could just be a standalone season 1 that leaves some clues to where a season 2 could go, but still like live within its own universe. So I'm having a blast with it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot that you've said, and especially one thing that I think that Skeleton Crew has been much more successful. Where, like, as much as I love the Acolyte, there's shortcomings to the show, and same thing with Mando season 3. I think a lot of it has to do with like streaming formats, right? And with the 8 episode format, I feel like some of these shows have felt very rushed, and where Skeleton Crew has kind of succeeded is kind of like maximizing those 8 episodes in a way that like a lot of shows haven't, right? Because like it kind of feels like even the short episodes, because today's episode we're discussing was a little on the shorter side, but it delivered everything it needed to do.
Yeah, it's a
It
lot.
set up everything that it's gonna get resolved in the finale. So somehow, where like in other seasons and other shows, I've been like, damn, just like 8 episodes ain't cutting it, ain't enough. We needed more. Skeleton Crew has been like, damn, like this is, all the fat has been trimmed, and we got that Wagyu steak, baby. Like it's just it's marbled. Everything has been good. But Nani, what did you think? What did you think coming into this episode? Has it delivered all the penultimate mysteries and thrills that we've been expecting?
I mean, I was actually really excited because pretty much all of our speculations were wrong.
Yeah.
So it went in completely different directions from what I was expecting. I mean, I thought that they were gonna, the pirates and the kids were gonna kind of run into each other at the planet. I wasn't expecting them to meet like before they actually got there, and then got to see like how they interacted even before they got home, and how that was gonna play out. Like I was sure that Jod wasn't gonna be the prick that he was in this episode, which
for lack of a better word, yeah.
Yeah, like double down on the fact that he's a greedy pirate. I'm all good with that. SM33 was the hero by far. That was, like yelling moments
He keeps getting got though. I feel like
I know. I mean, this time he got literally decapitated. But I mean, but good for him for, siding with the kids, even though it's like that pirate mentality. It's like, it's close enough to the code. I'm good. They're just merely suggestions. Like I am full pirate here, just kids. So it was really exciting to watch, and you don't know really where they were headed, and there were so many just it's like you were saying, Nick, it's so Star Wars at the same time that it's just like irreverently 80s, and it's a kids show that has grit. I was definitely not expecting Jod to shoot Brutus, and that was like a whoa, they went
sweet dog boy, yeah.
And then that whole sequence with the vault, Hosbando was just like, he paused it for a second. This is giving me such Camino vibes, and then they do the line and everything. I was like, wow, they're just like, adding all these great elements without it being, in your face, and just trying to be, oh, how many throwbacks I can do, and just, living on that. It's just, it all feels very natural to the flow of the show. And like you were saying, it's not just a thing of a vibe, it's like super immersive. Like you feel like you're there with the characters, which I feel like, yeah, some of the newer shows are just not really pulling that off, but this one completely does. And in every single episode. And visually it's so amazing. I mean, that first view that we get of at Atten,
Yeah.
from the outside, it's so insanely gorgeous. So I just, again, more questions towards the end. I still have no idea how they're gonna kind of wrap this whole thing together in one episode. I'm kind of hoping for a longer, finale to see if they can, flesh out the story a little bit more. It was also cool to see the parents again, like actually succeeding and trying to do something, not just like the stupid useless parents that we get usually in these kind of shows. And that reunion scene, it felt so real. Honestly, I got like a little, oh, that's so beautiful. I'm so happy to see each other. But yeah, now we're dealing with Jod, who's like, that reaction when he touches the credits, like the sinking into the madness moment, was so well done.
The
That
Arkenstone Hobbit type of thing. Yeah.
I mentioned Gollum last night. I was like, that was very much so like just this is all that matters with the ring. Exactly. Yeah.
And I have to say it because I want to get it out of the way. It's a nitpick, but I was texting with some buddies earlier today. The terrible CGI coins, it almost took me out of the moment. I was just like, what the hell is happening here? I was just like,
it was noticeable.
I was
which
like,
is surprising considering how good
everything
the
has
CGI
been great.
has been so far, and then you screw it up with the coins.
Yeah, it was almost as bad as Bo-Katan's wig in season 2 of Mandalorian. but that's it. That's it. This ain't a toxic podcast. We're not gonna beat a dead horse. We said it. We said it. The CGI was bad. Sorry, ILM. You've done wonders, but you're not winning awards on that scene. But it was such a roller coaster of an episode because like we went in so many different directions. We're in space. I wasn't expecting the kids to meet the pirates in space and like have that whole sequence of discovering that the Onyx Cinder is actually a ship from at Atten. So it's like this whole full circle thing for Kh'ymm was just like, oh, you've been looking for adventure outside when adventure has always been like right in your backyard, literally. But going through the mall storm and then going in at Atten and going into the vaults, it's just like we packed. It felt in many ways like Star Wars animation, because I feel like Star Wars animation has been some of the best Star Wars that we've gotten, and does perfect pacing with a lot of its episodes, where it crams a lot of story, a lot of character development, a lot of plot into like these 20-30 minute episodes. And I feel like this episode, Skeleton Crew, absolutely did that. And I mean, it took me on an emotional journey too, because
so emotional, really.
Like at first I wasn't vibing with the episode just because of Jude Law eating it up. Like he was such a jerk, man. He was like,
it's like,
I was like,
damn it, Jod.
I was like, damn it, Jod. Like,
what are you doing?
Like, what is this? And then I'm just like, oh my god, wait. I'm actually mad at a fake person. I'm just like,
he's actually a good actor,
He is actually a good actor. Yeah,
I don't really complain about Star Wars acting because I know I'm watching fantasy for the most part. But then you have someone like Skarsgård and Andor or Jude Law. And oh, these are the actors. Okay, it's really good.
And he crushed it, because I felt it, because I've been on this Jodemption thing for the last couple of episodes, which we'll get to. Like I think there's still an opening there, but the fact that he did this, and what everyone's saying, like the heel turn of just like committing to the dark side, quote unquote, which kind of needed to happen, I guess, or because he's kind of the antagonist, I guess, of the show, since we haven't seen any other. But there still has to be a twist, and I think the supervisor is that twist, voiced, fortunately or unfortunately, depends on who you ask, by Stephen Fry. So there's lots of questions there. But Nick, let's go back to your thoughts here. We were talking about Jod and how he executed Brutus and in cold blood, took over the ship again, and then just you know, threatened children in a
Yeah.
in a worse way than
Yeah.
Anakin ever did, right?
Yeah.
In Revenge of the Sith. Let's be honest, like this was
Yeah.
actually worse because I don't know what a relationship Anakin had with those kids, but here
Yeah,
we
right.
saw Jod kind of develop some sort of
Mhm.
relationship. So it was very jarring. So like, what has that journey for you? What has that journey meant for you? Seeing, you know, Jod since episode
Mhm.
2 or 3 up to now in his like most
Yeah.
villainous turn yet.
Yeah, I mean, before the series started, you know, we were doing some predictions on a, you know, we'll do a bingo card episode and just put what we think is going to happen. And we're usually like way off. Thankfully, you know, we don't want to predict this
Mhm.
stuff necessarily.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I predicted for Jod was I said triple cross. And to me, like we've been going back and forth with exactly what that means. What I meant by triple cross, Jod was going to triple cross the kids. What I meant by that was he's going to gain their trust. He's
Mhm.
going to cross them, and then he's going to redeem himself.
Mhm.
So I actually feel way further from that after this last episode because of
Yeah.
that like Gollum moment where I'm like,
Yeah.
he might uh, really just care about his, you know, his pirate feelings of wanting to be rich, basically.
Mhm.
I also just think story wise, he killed Brutus. I
Mhm.
don't know who he would have to save the kids from at this point.
Mhm.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, I really thought that triple cross, what I was calling a triple cross, was
Mhm.
going to happen. And that last episode put me down a path of like, I don't know. He might just be the bad guy now. So we'll see, because there is this, like you mentioned, supervisor, or
Mhm.
Yeah.
there's something which we had a good speculation. Maybe we'll talk about that later. We talked about some good stuff last night on our Thank the Maker episode. But yeah, I mean, I'm really enjoying Jude Law. I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah.
from how well he is portraying this character, and then in real life listening to interviews how much he reveres Star Wars,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's really great. I mean, most people who act in Star Wars have a decent amount of fandom, but he's a little older, so you know he has that original trilogy
Yeah.
feeling. You know, like
Mhm.
there's I was born in 1980 and I loved Star Wars my entire life, but I wasn't like a sentient human being watching Star Wars. You
Right.
know, I
Right.
was
Yeah.
I have, you know, my third birthday was, you know, even though Jedi was out, it was a Empire Strikes Back themed birthday. You know, like
Okay.
I was
Oh.
3 years off. Um, so I've liked Star Wars my entire life, and
Yeah.
but I could only imagine what it's like to be a little bit older and
Mhm.
going from watching whatever is on TV or in the movies to seeing Star Wars for the first time, like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and understanding what you're watching. Because to me,
Mhm.
I understood it in a very like kid way, and a lot of my fandom had to do with playing with toys. Like
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
played with the toys probably more than I watched the movies when I was growing up, but you know, I loved them nonetheless. But you know, my Star Wars fandom, you know, was reignited when Disney bought it and they were just going to
Yep.
make more. I was like,
Yep.
okay, this is great.
Yeah.
So I like hearing Jude talk about his, you know, just his youth and how he talks about Star Wars, and then you just get to see that he's a great actor. So
Yeah.
he's crushing this character, and I love that. I don't know where it's going at this point. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't need to be right. I don't need the triple cross thing. I just
Mhm.
also don't know who, like, if he's a bad guy right now, is he a bad guy in his own? Is he a bad guy with the pirates that are on the
Mhm.
frigate, like outside of the
Right.
barrier? Like, are they going to be a crew? Then what, you can't really, like, the mystery of what At-Aten is to the Republic right now is the thing I'm most excited
Mhm.
for this
Mhm.
final
Mhm.
episode, because if you're talking about like who is going to defend At-Aten right now, the four kids against the
Yeah.
pirates, you know, the
Right.
four
Right.
kids and the
Right.
parents against the pirates, like that doesn't seem like the likely, you know, battle.
Mhm.
So I wonder, I don't know. I think we're going to get I think it's going to be a twist. I think
Oh
there'll
yeah.
be a twist there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that 'cause we have some good questions, and now I've thought of some other ones for like our responsible speculation bit. But Nani, I want your POV on this, right? Because we've been talking about Jod and the possibility
Mm-hmm.
that the Jod redemption is out the
Yeah.
window. But like for me, one of the impactful things about his heel turn and the ship when he's threatening the kids with the lightsaber and
Yeah.
he's like talking down to each and every one of them. For me, that seems
Mm-hmm.
very important, not just because we get to see some great acting and we get to see Jod be like a villain towards these kids, but for me, like there's the subtext of projection, right? It's
Yeah.
Jod.
Mm-hmm.
He's not talking about the kids, right? He's talking
He's talking
about
about himself. Yeah.
himself in many ways. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
I think that this whole thing has kind of crescendo to where it is, so that in the finale, like, there can be maybe not a full redemption, because maybe
Mm-hmm.
that leaves the door open for him to show up somewhere else, or kind of be a Loki and Thor: The Dark World type of thing, where he's not redeemed, he's in prison, but Thor has to break him out of prison to hijinks, blah blah blah. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think Jod is past the point of redemption? Do you think there's still more to play here?
So honestly, like after he shot Brutus, I was like, oh, there we go. That's it. We're
Hmm.
done. He is going full bad guy. But I did get that same feeling that you did when he was talking down to the kids, that it was like very personal to him, everything that was happening, especially when he emphasizes so much that they're weak. It's
Hmm.
very, to me, it felt like the sentence was, as I was, is what was
Hmm.
going through his
Hmm.
head when he was saying that to them. It's like, I'm doing this to toughen you up, kind of vibe.
Hmm.
So, and the fact that he could have hurt them, like he didn't have to let them get back home. He
Right.
didn't have to, let them get to see his parents again. Obviously, he threatened to, if they said anything, I will carve your parents out with my lightsaber,
Sure.
you
Right.
know. But
Who hasn't said that about their parents in a fit
yeah,
of,
but it was really rough right at the beginning when he's just saying that they're absolutely obnoxious and you talk so much and it's grating on me and now you just need to shut up. When you could see that there had been some good rapport at the beginning. So it makes you think, like, was he playing them the whole time? Or is he now just doubling down on the character because he's so close to his goal? And who cares that I maybe have gotten emotionally attached to kids? That would make me weak. I'm never going to be weak again. And here's my gold and treasure planet and screw the kids. And now I have a lightsaber that I don't necessarily know how to use too well, because the way that he was kind of flourishing it didn't seem like he was actively trained
Mhm.
to use it. Like he knows the rudimentary way of how it works and everything, obviously more than Wim, who, kind of made it bounce and almost cut off his foot. But you can tell that he not necessarily knows how to use it and just decapitated SM-33 like in that specific way to like instill fear.
Mhm. Mhm.
And every single time he wants to emphasize that he's dangerous, he just lights it on. But there's kind of something missing there. Um, but yeah, I think the descent into madness moment got me thinking again. Whoop, no, I think we've lost him, because it's like it's just not just the greed, but becoming like the greatest pirate in history. I think it's kind
Mhm.
of the goal. It's not necessarily just about the money. Um, but I have no idea, because there's still so many questions about the supervisor. I mean, I think we've talked about that. We don't know if it's an actual person, if it's actually just another droid, like a mastermind AI that's
Mhm.
controlling everybody. We don't know what the relationship really is to the outside, because now in this episode, we find out that the parents know more than we thought, but they
Mhm.
still think it's the old Republic out there. So why is this internal control? And another thing that makes me think that it might be another droid or just a massive AI is the fact that when the supervisor makes the announcement, like you don't see a face or anything, it's just
Mhm.
like a seal. And the fact that it didn't even question the fact that a ship was coming in, it immediately assumed that it was an emissary, and just kind of like very protocol like, oh, there's an emissary coming, we have to respond to it, we take it to the vault, these steps. And it doesn't seem like, I feel like an actual person, and if it's an actual person that has control over this planet, has all this information and knows about the other treasure planets, that they would be suspicious that they haven't had contact from the outside at all.
Mhm.
like there'd be more reasoning behind it. So the supervisor possibly being the real antagonist, I think might open the door for Jod to do something positive here. But it could go either way, and honestly, I would be happy with it going either way at this point. The show has been so surprising, and even though I have always known that Jude Law is a good actor, this has really blown me away, and especially because he really has, for the most part, taken a backseat to the kids, and the kids have been like the main characters of the show. So I don't know how it's gonna play out, but we just have one more episode to find out. So I'm just excited to, finish this ride.
Yeah, and we're almost there, and we're gonna do like our final speculation in a few. But let's do a lightning round of users of fans, not fan. We don't have fans of online online questions. We made some.
Don't put us down.
We made posts on Blue Sky and YouTube, because we will not be using Threads anymore or Twitter. So on YouTube and Blue Sky, asking people what questions for us about this episode. So we're gonna do like a quick lightning round, because some of these we've kind of talked about and others are going to be part of the speculation. So let's do some quick answers here. This first one is from Jedi Crush over on YouTube, and they ask, what the hell, Jod? Their second question, if there's no season 2, there's no way Jod can redeem himself in one episode, right? Therefore, Jod must die. So, by whose hand? Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's always so hard to speculate because we're not in the writer's room. Like you could only like speculate with what we've seen so far. So there could very well be just a new antagonist that puts Jod on the side of the kids. Like that could be something that we don't know. So, I don't know. Like I said earlier, I'm just leaning towards him not being redeemed, but not being killed either.
Yeah.
I think that I think it's likely that there's another season. I don't know that we'll get it soon, but I don't know. I think they probably know it during production. I know this is like a little bit of a tangent, but like I think they probably knew during production that this was a good show. So they probably made steps for season 2 or for these characters to live on
later.
In other series, because there is a pretty, I don't know, I was going to say loose, but it's probably not very loose, but you have Boba Fett showing up in Mando, vice versa, Ahsoka showing up in Mando. Like you could have these kids, show up somewhere else, maybe down the road. I think that there's
young Avengers going on.
Yeah, who knows? And maybe it's Jod. I mean, who knows? That might be the better pick of this cast to show up elsewhere as like a bounty hunter adjacent, pirate type of person. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just leaning for him not to die and not be redeemed at this point.
Nani, what are your thoughts? Do you think Jod must die, and if he does, by whose hand?
So I don't think he should die, and I don't want him to. I think there's a lot of potential in that character and the way that Jude Law is portraying him. So I think it would be a miss if they actually just finished off this character before we got, full-fleshed potential out of him. But in the event that he did get murdered, I would bet on SM33 being put back together and taking his revenge.
That's a good one. I was leaning towards originally saying he's not gonna bite the dust, but now I'm just like, if he does, which I'm thinking not, but if he does, I'm gonna go classic Star Wars and just say that he falls into a bottomless pit.
And that was another thing where I was like, now that we're talking, I'm like, well, who would do it? But who would kill him? Like, but maybe there's a sacrifice.
He trips on some coins or something.
Yeah. If it does happen, if he unalives somehow, I don't think it's someone who's going to do it.
Yeah.
I think
I
it's a
agree.
sacrifice.
Or it could go the full, like you were saying, Nick. It could go full Lord of the Rings Gollum, and his own greed takes over, and he falls to his death in the vault or
foreshadowing.
something.
Maybe all of the huge towers of credits fall on him.
Yeah,
you know?
it'll be
that could be foreshadowing.
a nice
Yeah.
little Easter egg for Andor and Nemec. Crushed by, well, Nemec was crushed by capitalism, and then Ja will be crushed by his own dreams. A couple more questions here. These are from our Discord server. Monchovia Collections asks us, will 33 be refurbished for the final bout? I think this is a yes or no, so we can keep moving on. Nick, yes or no?
Yes, we'll see him.
Nani, what do you think?
Yes.
And here's an interesting one. There's two more, so let's do this one before going into the last one, because it's gonna unlock our speculation. But here we go. What role do you think if any, will Wim's mom play? Do you think she might be the supervisor? Nick, what do you think?
I haven't considered that. Yeah, I mean,
do we know if she's around? Actually, I don't.
Yeah, I don't remember any. Like, had they ever alluded to her being not alive? I don't really remember. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to say no role. I think we have enough, like, character, unless she's, I guess, yeah, okay. Unless she's the supervisor, like I'm saying, I think we have enough characters that we need, like, to band together on that side. But if we mentioned earlier, there's an antagonist or supervisor, but I'm leaning with you, Nani, where I think the supervisor could be some sort of droid or sentient thing going on. But I have other fun thoughts about that too.
Nani, what do you think about Wim's mom? Do you think she's gonna show up?
I hadn't considered Wim's mom at all. I kind of always just assumed that he was like a single dad, and mom was unalive. But I did for a second, not this episode, but I thought maybe Fern's dad.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
It's a Disney thing at this point, right? We have to have some unalived mothers somewhere so that kids can be heroes. So let's keep her out of this. Or maybe she shows up at the end and she's like, Wim, I've been waiting for you forever. And then it's just like sequel bait, a post-credit scene, and we start the Young Avengers initiative in Skeleton Crew Season 2. The second part of this one, which has to do with Wim's mom, but I wanted to kind of leave it for the end so that we can start our speculation towards the finale of Skeleton Crew, is, do you see her being sort of like an X-Wing pilot that's called in along with Kh'ymm? At the end, because we obviously have the setup of X-Wings coming in, the kids discovering that the New Republic and the good guys, and obviously we know Kh'ymm has some of the coordinates for a lot of the jewels of the Old Republic. So that's a plot thread that may be pulled at to kind of tie everything back together, because if the pirates find a way to cross the barrier, like you said, Nate, like, who's gonna take them on? Like, we love our kids, but they're just kids, right? So what's your speculation on that one? I don't think she's necessarily gonna be an X-Wing pilot here, but do we expect the New Republic to show up and save the Rangers of the New Republic to show up and save the day?
I believe so, only because I am fairly certain there's some X-Wing action from the trailer that we haven't seen yet.
Okay.
So something is going to have to happen with the barrier. Maybe the barrier is just gone, because it seems like only the reason that Onyx Cinder passed through is just because it was old enough, basically. It was. So something's going to have to happen, and probably rather quick, like early in the episode, for ships to pass through. Like, there's no way that frigate of pirates doesn't wind up on the planet. So that's got to happen pretty early on, and I don't necessarily know how that'll happen. But I don't know. We'll see.
Nani, what's your stance on X-Wings and Kh'ymm? Does Kh'ymm have a X-Wing of her own? What's going on?
I don't know. I don't think she has an X-Wing on her own, but I think she has.
She's Carson Teva's girlfriend. They just show up, tie it up with Mandoverse.
Well, Kh'ymm seemed to have a vested interest in, the treasure planets, because she'd been like researching them her whole life, and she also seemed actively concerned about these kids and the fact that Jod is a bad guy and should not be trusted. And we saw the X-Wings again at Lanupa. And so we know that she's probably thrown feelers out to like kind of check for unusual activity and maybe see where these kids end up. And I think, I think there's a chance that Jod is either gonna like convince the supervisor or somebody to take down the attack system so he can get his other ship to come. And then once he disables the barrier, it might become easier for whatever Kh'ymm's network is to find at and I think we are going to get it, because I think that's like your big fight at the end. You're going to have like the New Republic coming in and trying to help against the pirates, because otherwise, I mean, these people have been living in a little Pleasantville. There's no way they know
they've been
how
in a blue sky of their own in many ways.
So I don't think they really have any knowledge of how to defend themselves. But like I mentioned the last episode, we know that they have gunners and stuff like they did at Akron. And you can tell that the people don't know what this planet can do, because they are shocked when that airstrip like comes out of the ground. So they have no idea like where they are. So I don't think they would have any idea of how to, operate.
And we don't have an extra episode to do the Seven Samurai training, so they don't have time to train.
Right.
We were saying, I mean, this leads into speculation, but we were saying Kh'ymm has been the gunner so far in this, so we could see him manning that giant gun.
Yeah, and Neel would know like where to look for it because he was shown where by awesome French girl. But but we'll see, because there really is a lot to cover for just one episode. Like we were saying, I mean, the pacing in the show has been fantastic, and clearly they knew the goal from the beginning. Like they were very purposeful in what every episode gives us. So I don't think we're gonna be surprised. I mean, I don't think we're gonna be disappointed with the ending. It's just like there's so many questions that it really is hard to responsibly speculate when I mean it could really go anywhere. So
yeah, I mean, because for me, what I was thinking about when we were talking about the supervisor, because I think that's the biggest question. The other one being Jod, is Jod a Jedi Order 66 survivor? With Jesus Christ, I want that to not be the case. Let's just let him be some guy. So I'm not even going to speculate on Jod. But the supervisor, I think, is the interesting thing here, because for me, I'm still on team. He's Captain Renaud, and he's in there. I think there's going to be some. Here, I'm going to go full on a conspiracy theory hat. I feel like this is going to be like a Last Crusade type of thing, where Renaud is basically the knight from the end of Last Crusade, where he's just been, hoarding all this wealth, and it's in his ivory tower, trying to maintain control out of everything, and then all of a sudden, Jack Sparrow shows up in the shape of Jod and kind of wrestles power away from him. So I think it's going to be very Wizard of Oz in that sense, where it's going to be anticlimactic to meet the supervisor, because it's just going to be like, oh yeah, he's just some guy and he's the man behind the myth, and you just dethrone a person easily.
Who's now old and probably can't fight back.
Old and decrepit, and just, realize that, all the money in the world can't make you immortal or give you the things you actually need. And Jod takes over his role so that then he can take down the Maelstrom around at Atten so the pirates can show up. And then I was going to say I know I was joking about Carson Teva showing up, but because we have to do some more Disney synergy with Ahsoka season 2, I think that Carson Teva might show up because he's the Nick Fury of the Mandoverse. But I think it's gonna be cooler and more appropriate for a show like Skeleton Crew for have Seb show up and lead the X-Wing squadron to show up on at Atten. But that's my unresponsible speculation. Nick, what are your wild theories going into the Skeleton Crew finale?
I mean, because we're talking about pirates and we love Hondo, we've talked about Renaud because it looks like he's a Weequay, maybe like we're just being so Star Wars about like maybe that's Hondo's dad somehow and we get Hondo, whatever. The speculation that we kind of stumbled upon last night was if this is going to tie into Ahsoka and Peridia and Thrawn and the Mando movie and all whatever, that whole universe.
Yeah.
Someone funding the funding for what becomes the First Order.
Yeah.
And it's like, we just have a whole planet of money right now, you know, so that could be
multiple
something. Yeah, right. So so that's one thing that just through talking to each other last night, I think Mike brought up, you know, got a lot of money. There was the banking clan was on the
Nupa,
so there, if that winds up being the case, that is so well done to have this thread of money throughout that has, you know, I always joke, I'm like, Star Wars has to toe the line of like freaking out us nerds, but then also making my mom understand what's going on, you know?
Exactly.
So I'm like, if there's just this stuff that someone who's enjoying Star Wars just for the entertainment, they're enjoying themselves, and then all the podcast freaks could be like, yeah, but there's this money thing going on, and and the First Order
banking clan
funded in like 10, 15 years. So if that winds up being somewhat the case, that's great. And I do want to know what's going on with Jod, and you know, I think there's been enough non-Jedi Force using going on between Night Sisters, between the Coven and Acolyte, even Sabine, you know, like Sabine is just a person who's like a low level, you know, whatever, midichlorian, you know, maybe Jod just figured it out, you know, and he never was. I don't think he necessarily needs to be like a Order 66 survivor to know some low level. I could take my handcuffs off. I could, you know, grab keys from, you know, he's not. It's very obvious. They've told a story lately of like a lot of people can use the Force, and some people are better than others. If you're trained, you're better. You know, some people, no matter how much they train, can do. So maybe he's just someone who stumbled upon knowing how to use it and never was a Jedi. So that's why I think, you know, you mentioned Nani, like he's kind of using a lightsaber in a very strange way. You know, like it's just very waving it around like, look at me, I could kill you, instead of there's no stance, there's no nothing. So I would like to know more about that, but I'm gonna assume we're gonna get like a 47-minute episode, and I'm sure it'll be action packed. So like I mentioned earlier, with like earning some of the stuff we get with Star Wars, I don't want it to be like a throwaway line or something to explain. I'd rather it be even if we have to wait 3 years for season 2 or whatever and learn more about Jod, then I'd rather that than him just be like, I'm not a Jedi, I just know how to use the Force, you know, like whatever.
Maybe we'll get a flashback with a D.H. Law in his talented Mr. Ripley days. Showing us what he's got. Nani, what about you? What are your go crazy? Don't be responsible.
Go crazy.
Tell us you're irresponsible. Be irresponsible. Tell us the wildest things that are going to happen next week.
I have no idea.
That's actually the best way to go into it.
Yeah, I have no idea, and I'm just excited to find out, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they would, because they have kind of been hinting that this is part of the Mandoverse, so I think we are going to get somebody. Like, I like the idea of Zeb showing up, like a lot. But otherwise, I really, really don't I have no idea what we're going to get here, really. So
that's good, and that's the healthiest way, I think, to kind of go into anything, to not have expectations, so that your expectations doesn't override the enjoyment of the show. Because I think that's the best way is to approach it with an open mind and an open heart. And I think that Skeleton Crew has definitely been delivering in spades, a lot of heart, because it's been an extremely joyful show to have been experiencing. It's a little sad to be approaching the end of the journey, but we're very happy to have done it. and we could be talking about it forever, but next week will be the final time that we'll be talking about Skeleton Crew in a while. So thank you so much, Nick, for taking the
Yeah,
time
thank you.
to join us and talking about the penultimate episode and talking about Jod and Mos Eisley and some wild speculation about what's going on in the future. But before we sign out, why don't you tell us what you've got going on, what we can expect from Thank the Maker, and where everyone can find you.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be in the same, no man's land as all other Star Wars podcasts because we don't have anything until Andor, and then who knows what else after that. But we got some time to fill, but we're all going to Celebration, so we'll be in Japan in April. And so I think that's it as far as Thank the Maker. I already mentioned Mos Eisley has our Orlando party on February 7th, so you could get tickets for that. I think that's it as far as Star Wars goes. But my band Bayside, it's our 25th anniversary this year, so we have a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. We have a busier year than we've had in a very long time. So it all starts off next month. We're going to the UK for about a week's worth of shows, and then we have a lot of other stuff planned that is not yet announced, but will be announced soon.
Hopefully Chicago is one of those.
Yeah, that's needless to say, Chicago.
That's great.
So yeah, we have it's been quite a milestone to make it 25 years as a band, and each year getting better and better. So it's kind of time for us to realize a lot of stuff that we've been able to accomplish and be proud of it, because all we do is work hard to keep things moving, and while you're working hard, it's 25 years has gone by and you're like, wait a minute. Entire families are coming to see us now, like parents who saw us when they were 15 have their kids coming now, and it's like, wow, didn't even ever consider that would be a possibility, but it's happening now, and it's like beautiful, it's really a beautiful thing. So I'm for sure looking forward to appreciating everything that we've accomplished this year, and we have a lot of stuff going on. So in a couple of weeks, we'll announce a lot more stuff for sure.
Awesome. And we'll definitely be on the lookout for that. And we'll be leaving links down in the description below, so everyone can follow you and Thank the Maker and follow Mos Eisley and Bayside, obviously. So everyone that hasn't listened, please listen. Everyone that hasn't followed, please follow. And everyone that hasn't moshed, please get your tickets and mosh, because it's a wonderful, wonderful time. And like I said, thank you for taking the time to joining us. I know it's a complicated time right now with all the fires in California, so we hope that you and your loved ones and everyone that we know that's in California stay safe. Once we know a little bit more about donation links to help all the victims of the fires, we will also be sharing those. So, like I said, thank you. Stay safe, and we will hopefully talk to you in the future. But with that, Nani, why don't you sign us off?
Thank you so much, Nick, for coming on the Triad. It was so much fun. It's so insightful. I can't wait to get to the finale of Skeleton Crew, even though it's going to be bittersweet, because it's going to be sad to not have it anymore, and then just have to wait for Andor. So we at least have that to look forward to. So remember, like, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you think is going to happen in the finale and how you felt about Skeleton Crew in general. Happy Triquín Day, as we like to say in Puerto Rico, which was a few days ago. And until next time, may the Force be with you.